a massive announcement has been made by Prime Minister Modi. India goes into lockdown starting midnight for a period of 3 weeks from now. Now, already, almost all of the country, about 26 states and 7 union territories had announced a lockdown, but that was till 31st March. This is a nationwide, almost like a curfew situation that has now been put in place for a period of 21 days. Now, in a short while from now, we're going to get you live updates as well, as we're now beginning to get reports, unfortunately, of people already queuing up outside grocery stores and essential supply stores to stack up on that. There is really no necessity. The government is supposed to and will ensure that essential supplies are always available. That being said, the next big step, apart from the healthcare battle, will also be on the economic front. Now, the finance minister earlier in the day spoke about them almost sealing an overall economic package to deal with the impact of coronavirus. What I believe, on priority, we need to look out for those who will not be able to earn any money in these 3 weeks, who've already perhaps been at home for the last week, 10 days, depending on which part of the country they are in, and will not get any employment for the next 3 weeks, will lose out on earning their daily wages, will lose out on earning their monthly salary. And those people need our help. The poor, especially in the urban cities where the lockdown has already been implemented, they will need our help. Now, what will the government really do about it? That's the big question. What should various state governments and centre look at to ensure that these people have some money in their hands to at least survive in the coming weeks and months? That's the big question. Now, let me give you some examples of what some of the states have already done. For example, in the state of Uttar Pradesh, the Yogi government has said that they will give 1,000 rupees each to about 35 lakh labourers and free ration for 1 month to about 1.65 crore construction workers. That's in the state of UP. Now, we don't know for how long will this 1,000 rupees count and how regularly will the government give them more money, because if it's just 1,000 for a month, that's not going to be enough. Let's see what the state of Kerala has done. They have announced a 20,000 crore package to overcome the economic slowdown, but not too many specifics of how it's going to help those who are dependent on their daily earnings and will not be getting in that money. In Delhi, government has said free and additional ration to be given to beneficiaries under the public distribution scheme. Pensions to widows, senior citizens and disabled persons will be doubled. Arvind Kejriwal has also announced that there will be meals that will be served at the night shelters, and that all the daily wage laborers, construction workers, all of them will be given 5,000 rupees each. Now, obviously, the big challenge for him is going to be to ensure that the right people get this money and get it quickly, because they are not being paid already now for several days. In Odisha, 3 months worth of ration can be collected at one go. This is what Chief Minister Patnaik has announced. 3 months pension for senior citizens and those with disability at one go. 5 lakh to the panchayats to turn buildings into isolation wards. So that's on the healthcare start, has already been decided. In Karnataka, free ration for the next 2 months. For all of those who avail ration, using the card can get it in one go. In Uttarakhand, they have said a direct transfer about 1,000 rupees to the daily wage workers. Punjab is giving 3,000 rupees, but only to the registered construction workers. So there are different rules, different amount. And of course, one has to also look at how this money will be given to these people. By the way, this includes private enterprises, small businesses who will not be functional. What happens to the staff that's working in those businesses? Are we simply going to expect the private sector to be generous enough to continue to pay their staff? What about the cab drivers? What about, the workers who would be in the retail stores that have now shut down, and these workers have nowhere to go, in the warehouses, in the factories? All of those people, they need to be looked after. And that's the big question. Let's say good evening to Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist at Care Ratings, joining us this evening. I've also got Professor Ramkumar, Economist with Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and we'll also have Professor Santosh Mehrotra, professor at Economics for Center for Informal Sector and Labor Studies at JNU with us. But let me begin with Madan Sabnavis. Mr. Sabnavis, how do we go about this? And I think the first question that everybody has in mind is, do we have one scheme or one database that can be used to ensure that money is given into the hands of the right people?
In fact, I don't think we have a unified system right now. And even though I think theoretically one can say we have Aadhaar, and that could be a good way of reaching out to people, but Aadhaar doesn't really map you to your employment or your income which is earned. So I think what you have been mentioning about the different schemes which different states have brought in, I think the implementation is always going to be a problem. And like we've already seen that we've had 2 days of shutdown in a place like Mumbai, and already the distribution channels have gotten choked. So while the chief minister has said that essential commodities will be supplied to everyone, you talk to any shopkeeper and they'll say that the cops are just not allowing the vehicles to move. So I think we're going to have fairly difficult times until we're able to take care of this particular situation of the distribution channels. And the same thing holds also in terms of identifying the beneficiaries and passing on the money to them. And as you've again mentioned, that there are a large segment like your retail workers, your cab drivers, delivery boys who will be out of employment, who may not be coming under any of these schemes. So I think it's going to be very tough times in terms of employment and how we actually manage to maintain this business of sustenance, of basic sustenance of human beings. It's going to be a challenge because different states have different capabilities, and there's going to be a lot of pain, I think, going ahead.
Yes, and we are already looking at a situation, Mr. Sabnavis, for 3 weeks. What are the various segments that you think we need to first look at? You know, construction workers, factories are beginning to shut down. Even in a city like Mumbai, all your taxis are parked. They're not moving anymore. These people will also be losing money on a daily basis. Now, they're not going to be registered anywhere. Is there a database that tells the government that this man is not going to be earning, so we need to provide him some help?
No, absolutely. We don't have such kind of a database, and even the database which we have will be very much limited. So we will know that there are certain people who have been registered in different units, maybe on a construction site, and you'll be able to pass on the money to them, provided they have a Jan Dhan account, so that there is a seamless transfer. But I think for the rest of them, I think who are not registered, we will not be able to identify them. If we're not able to identify them, they will definitely be having a lot of problem in terms of income. But again, I'll go back to the point saying it's one thing to say that the unemployed are going to be in trouble, but I think even those who are employed who have the spending capacity are going to face a problem unless we're able to improve the delivery chains. And I think the instructions which come from the top have to really go to the bottom. Because even today, if you'll see the PM's message which he passed on, he has actually said that we're not supposed to step out from the houses. But the fact remains that, and you're also saying that essential goods will be provided. But we have seen that so far in 2 days, the essential goods are not really being provided because the message hasn't gone down to the lower level. And one is still unsure whether we can actually step out to buy essential goods. If I'm able to step out, will I be able to get bread? Will I be able to get milk? Will I be able to get vegetables? We have seen a lot of disruptions already in 2 days, and one was hoping that this would get ironed out over a period of time. But one is not sure because, as I told you, that the communications and the delivery systems are quite different in different states. And it's going to be very challenging because it's the very first time in our history that we're facing such a situation where there is a curfew imposed. We are told that essential commodities are there. We are told that income is going to be paid to a large segment, but we really don't know how to deliver this. So I think that's going to be the challenge going ahead.
And you know the points that you raised and I'm also raising are things that the government needs to look at right away. Let's also say good evening to Professor Santosh Mehrotra joining us right now. Professor Mehrotra, we're looking at a scenario now for a 3-week lockdown, at least starting tonight. What should be the priority for the government to ensure that those who've been rendered jobless because of the current scenario don't run out of money and don't go hungry?
Well, I think let me break your question up into 2 parts about going hungry. You know, one of the instruments that the government has in its hands is the public distribution system, which has for many, many years been holding stocks of about 80 million tons when the government actually needs only 20 million tons to run the PDS. So we are holding something like, 55 to 60 million tons, some 4 times as much as we need. So this can be certainly pushed out in 2 different ways. One, it should be made available through the ration shops. You see, through the ration shops, you are allowed currently only 5 kilograms per person. But if you raised it to 10 kilograms per person for a limited period, then at least you could perhaps make sure that everyone has cereal, but it only means cereal. Now, I mean, obviously, people should buy only when they need it, rather than buy it in order to then sell it in the black market. The other thing is that you have to prevent prices for grain from rising. So the PDS grain, which is sitting in the warehouses of state governments, that could be put out into the open market. In other words, shopkeepers, ordinary shopkeepers, I'm not talking about the ration shop. So these are the two things that one could do, but this would address only the problem of cereal access. What you asked the another question, what about cash availability if people live from hand to mouth? And casual day laborers do live from cash hand to mouth. You know, self-employed street vendors, etc., in urban areas also live from hand to mouth. And unfortunately, despite the fact that most of these people now, thanks to the Jan Dhan accounts, have actually got bank accounts, we could even identify them because they also have Aadhaar seeded bank accounts. Jan Dhan accounts are Aadhaar seeded. But the trouble is, who are you going to give a cash transfer to, and who are you not going to give a cash transfer to? Is the big question, which is the reason why for some 10 years, people like me and a few other economists have been making the argument that there should be a system of providing cash transfers. Now, the advantage of having cash transfers in lieu of physical supply of goods to the poor in our country and the marginalized and the needy, the advantage of cash transfer is that when you need to increase supply of cash in the hands of ordinary people, you can do it instantaneously, because through bank transfers you can do it, but you don't have a system. Because you don't currently have a system, and because the lockdown has happened from tonight, it's not even as though we've given ourselves a week or 10 days to begin to roll out the cash. So if we were to begin to, prepare this list of possible people, I mean, I worked on this, I've written on this, how to identify those people. Those people are identifiable in both rural areas as well as urban areas through the socioeconomic and caste census that has been done. It can be done, but, you can't do it tomorrow morning.
Right, absolutely. And unfortunately, like you said, we've had a lot of conversation about, having this kind of a list, database ready. The government in the past has made some effort of creating a record of those in the unorganized sector or the casual work sector. But I like Madan Sabnavis was saying, there isn't one unified list available. Now, the other aspect, and I want to talk about that as well, is the economic cost of what we are looking at. And the detailed guidelines have just emerged. We are going to be shutting down, Mr. Sabnavis, complete economic activity for 21 days. All factories, all businesses, all private organizations, complete shutdown now for 21 days. What are we to brace for then?
Actually, if you look at it in pure GDP terms, I would say that on an average daily basis, we produce something like 50,000 crores of real GDP. So if we're talking of 20 days of shutdown, we're actually talking of around 10 lakh crores. And given that our real GDP is, say, in the region of around 150 lakh crores, 10 lakh crores is a fairly large amount. We're talking of around 7 to 6 to 7% of GDP, which is going to fall on account of this kind of a shutdown. This will, of course, be at the limit, because I assume that even today, when we are saying there's a shutdown, there would be certain production activity which would be on to make sure that the essential goods do travel across the country. But that would be probably more or less maybe around 10,000 crores. So on an average, I would say around 40,000 crores of GDP is going to be lost on account of shutdown on a daily basis. But probably in terms of whether it's worth the cost, in case we're able to save lives and we're able to show, and we are quite assured that the virus is behind us with minimum fatalities, I think it may be a cost which is worth the effort. effort. But as I mentioned earlier, and I think what you had started off the discussion about the pain which is going to be there in the 21 days, I don't think we have the administrative ability to carry it out to make sure that the people get the transfers. And even look at this number we're talking of. 1,000 rupees for a person means a family cannot live on 1,000 rupees a month. You require much more than that, given the family size of around 4 or 5. So I think there's going to be a lot of disruption. I think there's going to be a lot of suffering. I'm not quite sure if everything has been planned out at the top level. Because I think when we hear things from the center, yes, it's a very good idea. But by the time it comes to implementation, by the time it comes to the household level, I think things are not really that clear.
Yes,
so
and a lot of it will also depend on what the individual state governments are doing. And one is hoping that state governments have also been working on a plan for people within their own state and they move towards it as well. Let's also say good evening to Professor Ramakumar, economist at TIS, who's joining us this evening. Professor Ramakumar, before I come to you, I just need to go across to Aarti Subramaniam, who's joining us from the newsroom live, and she's got a copy of the detailed guidelines that have now been issued. Aarti, lockdown starting midnight. What does the guideline advisory say?
Right, Tanvi, this is a very, very important list. I know there has been a lot of confusion, a lot of rumor mongering about what stays open, what remains shut. We've seen some people rushing to grocery shop. I hope this puts to rest all their concerns. Let me quickly take you through this. Now, while commercial and private establishments will be closing down, the list that I am about to read to you will remain open. This is for all our viewers. The following list will remain open. Shops, including ration shops, dealing with food, groceries, fruits and vegetables, dairy and milk booths, meat and fish, animal fodder, will remain open. So for everyone right now who's watching this, please don't rush to your nearest store. These shops will continue to remain open. The government has, however, urged to ensure home delivery to minimize the movement of individuals outside their home. So this is a very, very important clarification coming in. All grocery shops will remain open. The second big thing, banks, insurance offices and ATMs will also remain open. Please don't go rushing to your nearest ATM. ATMs will continue to function. Banks will continue to function as always. Now, telecommunications, internet services, broadcasting, cable services, IT and IT-enabled services for essential services will be continuing. Delivery of all essential goods, including food, pharmaceuticals, medical equipment through e-commerce, this will continue. Petrol pump, LPG, petroleum and gas retails will continue. Please don't drive your car to the nearest fuel outlets. Again, petrol pumps will remain open for the next 21 days. There is no problem. This is a primary list, Tanvi, because we've been receiving a lot of concerns. There are a lot of rumors doing the rounds. People are rushing to the streets. This is the thorough, complete list of guidelines. We'll be putting this out shortly as well of what remains open. So there is no need for concern at all.
Reiterating what's just come out, and Aarti was reading out, and actually one essential part, and Prime Minister Modi, by the way, has just tweeted again, and he has clarified on exactly what, we were telling you a short while ago that perhaps he should have emphasized more about is the availability of essential supplies. And so here is the PM now appealing to people to not panic and not converge around shops. He's just tweeted saying, by converging around shops, you are risking the spread of COVID-19. No panic buying, please. Stay indoors. I repeat, center and state governments will ensure all essentials are available. Before that, he put out another tweet, and that's the one on your screens right now. My fellow citizens, there is absolutely no need to panic. Essential commodities, medicines will be available. Center and various state governments will work in close coordination to ensure this. Together, we will fight COVID and create a healthier India. Aarti?
Yeah, Tanvi, I just want to, there's one more important message here, one more important guideline here. Hospitals and all related medical establishments, including their manufacturing and distribution units, both in public and private sectors, such as dispensaries, chemists and medical equipment shops, labs, clinics, nursing homes and ambulance will continue to remain functional. All chemists continue to remain open. Please don't worry about that. If you need a regular supply of medicine for any purpose, you will continue to get that as usual. Also, for all doctors and nurses who are watching and wondering, the transportation for all medical personnel, nurses, paramedical staff and other hospital support staff will be permitted. So a very, very important message coming here. Just to repeat, Tanvi, once more, all grocery shops, ration shops, shops selling fruits and vegetables, dairy and milk products, meat and fish will remain open. They will remain functional, as will banks, insurance offices, ATMs, and delivery of all essential goods, including foods, through e-commerce.
Yes, that point. Delivery of all essential goods, food, pharmaceuticals, medicine, equipment, whatever you need, even through e-commerce. Now, of course, while the government announces this, they need to ensure that the messaging goes to the last mile, that the policemen on ground know this. We've got reports today where delivery boys got beaten up, by the police who are trying to enforce a lockdown. We have reports of media personnel getting targeted by the police for doing their job on ground. That cannot be happening. Aarti Subramaniam, thank you so much for getting us the details. Very important, that guideline that has been now put out and the appeal by Prime Minister Modi. Let me go across to Professor Ramakumar. Professor, the big question I'm also asking tonight is, when the country goes into lockdown, how do we ensure that the people who will lose out on earning their daily wages, who will lose unemployment, where businesses will shut down, where companies will start asking their staff to not come and will not pay them, how do we ensure that they survive, they have some basic money available?
May I say one thing? This announcement of lockdown from 12 midnight at 8 p.m. is a completely ill thought out strategy. It reminds me of the demonetization of November 2016, when at 8 p.m. it was announced that no legal tender would be allowed from 12 midnight that day. This is not how public policy should function. This is extraordinarily poor public communications on display. This announcement need not have waited till 8 p.m. This announcement could have been made yesterday night, or at least today morning, in an address to the nation by the same Prime Minister. That would have allowed people enough time to react to it, respond to it. That would have allowed the government enough time to respond to clarifications and so on. There would have been much more clarity in what is to be done, or what would these 21 days lockdown look like if the announcement was made earlier and full information was given to the public. If I
can just come there for a minute, I understand what you're saying. But I just want to highlight that even before the announcement of Prime Minister came in, 26 states and 7 union territories were already in a state of lockdown, and all of these restrictions that are there were already present. Now, that was till 31st March. We are looking at 2 more weeks of that.
If that was the case, we wouldn't have seen such confusion after 8 p.m.'s address. Just what you reported right now is quite contrary to what you just said. I think that a lot of confusion could have been avoided if good information could have been given to the public at good notice. That's one point. Coming to your main question, which is related to what informal sector workers, how they will be affected. I think it's going to be a serious question that the government will have to work through. There is supposed to be an economic task force that is supposed to clarify matters to the nation. Media reports indicate that this economic task force has not yet started functioning in full on a full scale. The finance minister today indicated that there is going to be what is called a multi-layered task force and not a single task force. We do not know who the members are and so on. So there is not clear, and there is no indication on what the government is thinking through in this at this juncture. What should be done is clearly the following. Next 21 days, we have to allow people, facilitate normal life to pass on smoothly. You have to ensure that people have enough food to eat. You have to ensure that there are enough essential supplies in the market, and there are enough facilities for people to go out and buy it, of course, keeping all precautions at hand. Now, this kind of, there has to be a very clearly laid out strategy of when shops will be opened, what kind of shops will be opened at what time, and so on. So food will have to be very clearly, and other essentials would have to be very clearly made available. The option of PDS will have to be invoked on a universal basis. PDS is one instrument that we have to ensure that people have at least cereals to eat. Of course, we need more commodities, but at least cereals to eat. That is something that needs to be immediately universalized.
Right.
And in large areas of the country, there should be free supply, if necessary, of food grains, if not at subsidized prices.
Yes, many states, to what you're saying, have announced that, and also at subsidized rates and and free ration. I think more and more governments by tomorrow will come out and announce their plans in tandem with this. But like Professor Mehrotra was saying, it has to go beyond the basic ration and beyond the basic grains as well.
I will come to that.
Yes, Professor Mehrotra. I'll come back to you, Ramkumar. Professor Mehrotra, what would be the key challenge now to ensure that the supply of essential commodities doesn't get hit? That maybe tonight and tomorrow there will be some panic buying that we are already witnessing, but to ensure that we don't see prices skyrocket and we don't start running out of basic essentials.
Well, that's the biggest question. I'm glad you've asked this, because what is likely to happen, I fear what will happen, is that many traders will in fact engage in price gouging. There will be a sudden jack up in prices, regardless of whether there is a shortage or not. And in that situation, it is the most vulnerable who will actually lose out. So I don't know how this is could be handled. So in that sense, a certain amount of preparedness and a certain amount of time being given for ensuring this kind of preparedness might have enabled a situation of price gouging to be perhaps mitigated, perhaps not eliminated altogether. But honestly, this is going to be pretty serious. I'm actually at a loss for words as to how we will move forward from this point onwards, especially as far as the marginal are concerned. Let's just remember that 80% of our workforce is either self-employed or casual workers. Barely 20-odd% of our total workforce has regular employment. Tanvi, the likes of you and me and Professor Ramkumar and Madan Sabnavis we account for literally 7% of the country's workforce. So I don't know. I have very little else to say for the moment. There are ways to handle this. If we needed time, if we had time, I mean, I've written about this as to what can be done, but you need time in order to to work the playbook.
Yes, although I must say that I don't know if whatever time this announcement would have been made, people have still run right at that time outside to queue up and start buying this. I know that many people didn't even wait for Prime Minister to finish his speech, and they were already outside, because that's the kind of panicky reaction we do often see. Now all we can do is again and again tell them that essentials will be available. I know Ramakumar disagrees very vehemently with me on that point. Before I come to you, Mr. Sabnavis, to your mind, what would be the key challenge to ensure that this supply chain doesn't get broken?
No, I think you have already mentioned, and I think this is what even I realized when I spoke to around 4 or 5 shopkeepers in my vicinity, that delivery vans have not been allowed to cross from Thane to Mumbai. We have seen that delivery people who are trying to move in their trucks are being hit by the cops. They're being driven back. So I think the major problem which we're having today is communication. See, the PM says something, and all of us got fairly petrified, because when you say you have to stay at home, we thought, what's going to happen to essential goods? Now that you've given us a clarification that nothing actually changes from what is today, I think it's a bit comforting. But then we have seen that at the ground level, things are very much different. I haven't seen a loaf of bread for the last 2 days. And see, I'm staying in a posh area out here. I don't know what bread is, because bread supplies are not coming in. So I think the problem is really in terms of delivery, in terms of communication, so that there is better harmony which is there right along the chain. And we've also said that, see, we've been told that this shutdown means that all manufacturing units come to an end. This means at some point of time, your stocks in the shop are going to run dry. Today, if I require edible oil, I think that's something which all of us use. And we have seen that the godowns have been closed down. Trucks are not being allowed to move. So what is the point in having rice and wheat if I'm not able to cook a meal? So I think this is the basic problem which is there, where the communication has not been very firm, and it has to go right down to the COP level so that there is harmony. I think unless we are able to get that right, there's going to be a lot of suffering. We have seen it already in 2 days. And today, if we're talking of 21 days, there's going to be 19 days of challenges. And then coming back to the unorganized labor, I think they're going to suffer a lot because there's not much money which is being given, even in case it reaches them. And we have seen all of them trying to run back to their villages because you can't survive in a place like Mumbai or in Delhi. So I think there are lots of travails for them, and I think it's going to be hard times for everyone.
And every time we go through that situation, let's also keep in mind that this is to ensure that we defeat this disease so that we can move on. Now, obviously, for those, for the underprivileged, for the poor, for those who lose their jobs, it's going to be a bigger challenge, and that's where the government needs to focus on. Mr. Ramakumar, final comment from you before I wrap up the conversation for tonight.
There is one very important point that the earlier speaker mentioned, which is related to ensuring that supplies are on track.
Yeah.
This is very important because even if we are thinking of providing a cash transfer to people, there are problems there, I think, though Professor Malhotra appeared sympathetic to it. There are issues related to how you select the beneficiaries. There are large areas of the country without internet connectivity. There are large areas of the country without bank branches, so they can't even withdraw their cash. They can't even travel to the bank because of the lockdown. There is not enough digital banking. There is not enough digital transactions that we are on at this point of time. So what will people do with the cash is one question. B is, even when cash is available, will supply respond to the demand that will come from the increased cash transfer to people? If supply doesn't respond to it, increased cash transfers will make demand much higher and supplies lag behind, leading to inflation and related unrest in the society. These are very important matters. These are not matters that have been thought through. These are not matters that have been thought through, and there is not enough thinking that has gone into it in terms of whether the government has thought about an economic package for the economy as a whole. That's why I insist on the fact, on the point that there has to be clarity of thought on the part of the government. Fair expectations have to be passed on to the society. There has to be hope to people that something is coming from the government. The government keeps promising an economic package, but there is no economic package announced even in the finance minister's press conference of today or the prime minister's address of today evening, except a 15,000 crore package for the health sector, which is, of course, an emergency requirement.
Yes.
We need a package for workers. We need a package for small and medium enterprises. We need a package for the economy as a whole. And tomorrow or day after itself, that announcement should come from the government. That's my request.
Well, the finance minister in the afternoon said that they are on the verge of sealing a big package and an economic package plan, and it will be staggered of what we need right now and what we would probably need in 3 weeks and 4 weeks. I actually thought that perhaps the Prime Minister will be making the detailed announcement today, but that's not come. So maybe in a day or two, that those set of announcements will also come. I also feel that so far what the government focused on today, Professor Malhotra, was more about, extending some deadlines and giving some minor relief to people on taxation, or talk about stimulus to the industry. We can't be talking about stimulus at a point where we are shutting down economic activity. Shouldn't the focus already be more about how to ensure that people get food to eat and some money to spend for emergency purposes?
You are right, but at the same time, I mean, I'm in sympathy with what Ramkumar just said. You see, there's absolutely critical need. There was, before COVID hit the economy, there was a critical need for a revival package. I mean, the economy was in slowdown for 8 quarters. We are at the slowest rate in 15 years. Unemployment is at the highest in 45 years. And the COVID has come at that time. Now, clearly, we could have or should have seen a package in place prior to what the crisis that we are now facing on account of COVID. So honestly, let's wait to see what announcements are to be made in the economic package that we're talking about. But as we've been saying, the newspaper reports seem to suggest that the economic task force is not exactly up and running. Who's a member of it? We don't know. Is it only the bureaucrats? Is there anyone else?
Well, this is an unprecedented situation, and I think more and more experts need to be brought in to prepare us and to give an ideas of what can be done and do this innovatively. A country very different from rest of the world, and we have to treat our problems separately and as our own unique ones. Thank you so much to three of you for joining us on this special conversation. I would love to have you again as we go forward and look at more details as far as the economy is concerned and challenges for people. A big announcement. Focus right now needs to be that the supply for essential commodities doesn't break. And on our part, we need to ensure that we don't resort to panic buying. There will be enough available. We need to have that faith and trust in our government, because otherwise it doesn't help. You hoard tonight, you go stand in a crowd, you risk yourself getting coronavirus. You take the risk of getting infected. Don't do that. Have some patience. Patience, resolve, and discipline. That's what the Prime Minister said. I'm going to take a very short break. On the other hand, we will bring you live updates. Our reporters are outside right now, bringing us updates of what the on-ground situation is. How is the nation responding to the PM's announcement? Stay with us.